Wrong button. I call pre-meeting for the Board of Adjustments, October 10th, 2023. We have a quorum here. I'd like to turn the time over to staff if give us a little bit of background as we filter in.
So tonight you have two variances. I think that we've gone over training on variances in the last few months with the Board of Adjustment. I believe last meeting, which was a few months ago, we talked about a variance. And so just remember there's 5 tests of hardship in a variance established in state law and in city code. And the variance really is a relief valve from strict interpretation of the zoning ordinance. So because there could be cases uh, where the zoning is blind and it may not be the best fit for all lots based on various conditions, lot configuration, things that have happened in the past, that type of thing. But just remember the 5 tests of hardship, the applicant needs to meet those in order to be granted a variance. And staff has prepared staff reports for you outlining what those are and what we feel is or is not the reason they meet the tests of hardship. A variance will, and what it does, it's generally applied to something to do with a lot, either a setback, an area requirement, or in the case of tonight, underground and utility. It's never based on a use, so a use could never be a hardship. So somebody lives in a residential area and they want to do a slaughter yard there, that could never be a hardship. So just remember that it should be attached to the property in question, and it's not a use. And so that's really just in a nutshell. So you have 2 variances in front of you tonight. One is for an area requirement, and as I said, the other is for undergrounding of utilities. And with that, do you have any questions for me? We have Mr. Ames here, are you staff's attorney or the Board of Adjustments attorney? So,
I'm the Board of Adjustments attorney, and Duncan Murray is attorney for the staff.
Yeah. So if you have any legal questions, Mr. Ames is your attorney as a board, and you don't want my legal advice anyway. Anyway, with that being said, do you want to add anything, Chase? Are you good? So,
They probably don't want my advice either, but unfortunately, you'll have to hear it when necessary. But no, I don't have anything to add. Thanks.
I have a question. So I wasn't sure on the second variance. I'm not sure I understood correctly. So the code requires that the utilities be underground and they want to keep them outside, or vice versa?
So the code requires any new subdivision to bury their utilities, whether they're existing or new. So the applicant is requesting a variance to not be required to bury those.
I had a question regarding the situation where the city would purchase land to widen a road. My understanding of that is the owner has very little say in how that goes through. Like, does the purchase happen regardless of what the owner wants, just at a fair market price, or is there any back and forth or agreement on the price for that?
well, as you do know, in the Constitution, the Western City does very little condemnation of property, but under the Constitution, that is one thing that cities can condemn property for, is for roads, schools, that type of public uses. Usually the property is purchased at a fair market value, which is done by an appraisal. Now, fair market, and that's all that's required under the Constitution is that they be paid the fair market value. They can't say their property is worth more than everyone else's around it because the city needs it. And that is to protect the government agency, which is all of us, because we're self-rule and that. But so they are purchased at fair market value. Now, the interesting thing is that if someone is developing a new subdivision in a piece of farm ground, they're required to dedicate that to the city. So it's not purchased, it's not a fee title purchase, it's a dedication. But the city gets and its residents get to take on forever the maintenance of that property they've been dedicated. When we widen a road, we have to pay the fair market value, so that's a fee title purchase. So the city does that. I've seen very few cases where the city is not able to negotiate with a property owner in fairness to purchase property for widening of a collector street.
So there is some room for negotiation in the process.
I don't know. I don't get involved in that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, I'm confused on the question. The money that,
See, it's just to understand, like, when the city comes in, takes a portion of land because of a road widening, like how much?
it wasn't particularly on our thing tonight.
It is, just because one of them is regarding a lot that had some widening done and took away a portion of the lot. I just wanted to know, like, is that something that's negotiated, and like how much does the owner that's having the land taken away or purchased from them, how much say and all of that? That's all I was kind of after.
I had a good question on the subdivision of the lot from the first variance. And maybe I just missed the information there. On this subdividing, are they subdividing into two lots? Is there one lot remaining with the home that's on there, and then the second lot will be a new home?
Correct.
Okay. So the old home will stay there within that lot, and they aren't building a new home on the old lot.
They're keeping the existing home, subdividing the lot, and the desire is to build a new home.
Perfect. Thank you.
I do have a follow-up on that variance as well. Is that basically the case of what's called an eminent domain that the city is exercising, and that they did that back in, was that 1959? I don't remember the date. I know it was a long time ago.
I don't know, Mr. Kennison, you may remember, did they pay your father-in-law for the property? I doubt if they used eminent domain to take the property from him.
Recall.
Yeah.
Personally involved much in that conception.
Yeah. The city, like, for instance, right now, UDOT, it's not the city is going through a big widening process on 90th South. They negotiate, UDOT goes out, UDOT will establish a fair market value that they will pay. They would contact all the property owners and make an offer to them. Now, 90th South is a little more complicated because there's commercial property and residential, and so there's different values for each of those and different items that need to be negotiated. They will negotiate in fairness, but a government agency, UDOT, Western City, always has the right to declare eminent domain if they need to. And there's some legal nuances where they'll do a friendly condemnation so a property owner can get tax advantages and things like that. But usually all of property purchases are negotiated because I think that being a holdout, you're not going to get any more than what the people have gotten around you. Particularly in a road situation. Now, if it's a redevelopment, let's say a commercial project, you can hold out forever because the government's not involved in that. There's just the threat of eminent domain, but with a road, they actually can condemn your property and take it for a road because it's for the public good. So I don't know if that explained it very well.
I can add to this also. My grandparents lived on 70th South, and we still own their property in the family. So they've had the road widened. They built in 70, 72 maybe. So they've had the road widened multiple times over the years, and they've paid about fair market value each time. So they also started with the 1 acre and are slightly below that now. And similar situation to what you have, they're zoned for the 1 acre lots. And yeah.
So another follow-up question on the zoning. It says it's zone RR20 for that variance. And so it's, from the way I read it, it said that they couldn't have lots less than the 0.47. But then there's lots around the area that are as low as 0.25. Are they in a different zone?
Or they could be, or they could not be, or it could be past decisions that were made decades ago. The reason they resulted in that way, you know, I think, and I put that in the staff report as an example, is what the applicant is asking for is not out of character for the area. Now, is it exactly the same? No, but it's not. 5,000 square foot lot. It's pretty close to what the half acre or the 20,000 square feet is. And so it's, that area is an old area of the city, so you don't get the cookie cutter, for lack of a better word, type subdivision. You don't get all 8,000 or 10,000 square foot lots because it was agriculture at one time, and they split it off into 1 acre lots, and then they split that off to another lot, and somebody gave some to their children. And so in the past, a lot of those situations could have occurred before West Jordan even annexed that area of the city. So I don't have a really good history on why things occurred the way they did, but I think enough said that it's not out of character for the area. And if you just focus on the hardship that the applicant's asking for, that's really, is it going to be disruptive to the neighborhood? That's
Okay.
what you look at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? At this time, we'll close the pre-meeting then. Welcome everyone to the West Jordan Board of Adjustment meeting. Today's date is October 10th, 2023. We have 3 items on the agenda. First being the approval of the minutes. I'd like to entertain a motion. Everyone's had an opportunity to read the minutes.
I move to approve minutes from July 11th, 2023.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion was made by Chad Lamb, seconded by Christine Wright, and unanimously voted upon. Okay. Item number 2, the Kennison variance. 6634 South, 2700 West, variance from the area requirements of the rural residential 20 RR-20 zone to a 19,384 square foot minimum in preparation to subdivide the property. The RR5C zone. Ivan Kennison is the applicant. Larry Gardner as the staff person on this one. It's parcel number 31146. Well, I take that back. It's parcel number 2121-37014. I'll turn the time over at this point to the applicant to present the proposal.
There's not a whole lot to say. Other
Can you
than-
come up so that we'll be able to hear you? And it is a recorded meeting.
Good. Included in the application, I covered pretty much everything in that the property was purchased by my father-in-law, probably 60 years ago. And he purchased an acre lot. And then sometime after that, Don Brower, who was a resident to the north, purchased the piece just to the north, and he subdivided that, and it was given a half-acre requirement, and he subdivided that, giving the lot that's on the that's next to 27th West probably a half acre or 20,000 square feet. And then it wasn't very long after that they widened 27th West. And the fact that half acre lot that he originally had his house on is now a third of an acre gives you kind of an idea of how much that the city took of the property. But at any rate, so bottom line is that the lot I have is a little bit less than the required for 40,000 square feet, about 1,200 square feet shy. And I have problems with getting water to it anymore. It used to be an agricultural, and we grew crops. My kids grew tomatoes and corn, etc., etc. But you can't get water to it anymore just because of what happens over time. The ditch was put underground and so on. The only really good thing that it has value for, in my opinion, is a home. And it's really convenient there because there is good access, both utilities and the road. And 600 square feet isn't very much. I can't really think of a negative. So, any questions?
I have one quick question, and this could be a yes or a no, but are the neighbors in the circle okay with building another house in that circle?
The only one that really has interest that I would think would be interested at all in saying yes or no would be Sharps directly to the west.
Okay.
And he would love to see another home there.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, before he thought better about it, had a little chance to think about it, he offered to sell me 1,200 square feet of his ground so that I could do that. However, I don't feel good about that, and he didn't either.
Yeah. Sometimes in small neighborhoods like this, there'll be people that I don't want anything there, but then again, it's your property. So I just want to make sure, as we do this, that your neighbors are okay with it as well.
Well, to the north, I've got a daycare center. And I don't think it's going to be anything but a daycare center just because of the way the house was built. Kind of.
So it's not a residential?
I don't think it's allowed to be residential.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure, but that's what I've heard. And then there's the third of an acre lot on the corner that Don Brower sold. It's been sold a couple of times. And then on the north of that, you can see the building there.
Right.
That's a fourplex.
Okay. Well, that's good. It sounds like there's not any opposition, so that's good.
I know nobody that would be opposed to it.
Thank you.
Am I through?
Oh, I'm just curious, so I'm gonna ask because you
Okay.
don't run across land anymore close to conveniences like the freeway. Is your family gonna snatch it up and build?
My plan is my son, I will build a home for him.
Okay.
You
nice.
see, I have 4 young kids that were my other sons, and they passed away in an auto accident. So I'm raising 4 kids. And my other son, it would be really handy if he lived closer.
I imagine it would.
So that's my purpose.
Nice.
I have one quick question for you. Access. Is the access coming? Where's the access come in at?
That Brower Circle.
Okay, just off of that, then you just go
Yes.
off of that. Okay,
Yes.
all right, that makes sense. I saw the other road.
And then I intend to work out something with my neighbor directly to the west, Sharps, to where together we could see. That's the road he uses to get his cars back and forth. Together, maybe we can work out something that would work as far as extending that circle a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
So it sounds like access to your property is on 27th West, and then this other lot would be on Brower Circle. Is that correct? Am I saying
That's basically correct. Yes.
And another question. So the property you're basically looking at just cutting it, what's there currently, in half and have
Sure.
kind of an equal.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll turn the time over
Okay.
to staff now.
So, couple of housekeeping items. Board member Lamb, this was publicly noticed, so all the neighbors around him got a notice that this meeting was taking place. And so if they were terribly concerned, I guess they would have been here. That's my assumption.
What comment?
So come to the microphone, please.
Just a comment. I did give a copy of the notice to my neighbor Sharps, and he really wanted to be here, but he's out of town.
So, and
Thank
then
you.
the second item is Brower Circle is a public road. so he can access it. He could access the subdivision lot off of the public street. So, as Mr. Kennison said, the property has been, he owns it now. He purchased it in 2007. It's been in his family since 1959, where 1 acre was purchased by his father-in-law. So it was the 43,560 square feet when he purchased it. And sometime between, I couldn't nail down the exact date because engineering couldn't give me the exact date. And so I put a pretty large range in there, a 7-year range between 1997 and 2004, 2700 West, which is a master plan collector street, was widened. And with that widening, 4,792 square feet were taken from, for lack of a better word, I believe that his father-in-law was paid for the property, but the property was taken from the 1 acre lot, leaving 0.89 of an acre, so less than the 1 acre lot. So the property at 6634 2700 West is located in the RR 20,000 square foot zone, which means that a lot needs a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. Mr. Kennison approached the city about subdividing the lot, the current lot, as he has explained, into 2 lots, was told he did not have enough area, that he was lacking 4,792 square feet, or basically a little over 2,000 square feet per lot to meet the minimum zoning requirement. And as we pointed out, or Mr. Kennison pointed out, I put this slide here purely to help the Board of Adjustment see that the request is not out of character for the area. There are some lots that are 1 acre. There's some lots that are 1/2 acre. Some lots that are close to 1/2 acre, which Mr. Kennison's lot will be 0.47 of an acre, which is the both lots if the board was to grant a variance. You can see as you go farther north, there's some smaller lots, 1/3 of an acre. So none of the lots are terribly small. They are, what he's asking to do is build a single family home on one 19,384 square foot lot if the Board of Adjustment approves the variance. And I also put in the staff report that Western City is aware that taking a property for roadway expansion can create a hardship for residents. And as if you read and 1394E, non-conforming lots created by public action. Now, if Mr. Kennison's lot was non-conforming, which it is not, because it's over 20,000 square feet, then it would be easy for the zoning administrator to say, well, you're 75% of the minimum lot requirement, and you therefore can build a home on that lot, but it is not non-conforming. But staff and Mr. Kennison is saying that he meets the test of hardship because the but-for test. If the city wouldn't have taken a portion of his lot, he would have had sufficient room to subdivide his lot and enjoy a private property right. But except for the public action, he is not able to do that. So that's the reason for the variance process, for the Board of Adjustment to look at it and determine whether a hardship was created or a hardship exists because of the zoning ordinance. As staff, I believe that Mr. Kennison meets all of the tests of hardship and recommend that the Board of Adjustment approve this variance. So, and one last slide. This is actually a subdivision that Mr. Kennison has had prepared by Ensign Engineering, and that very, very faint line in the middle, as you can see, would be where the lot line would be, and it's just as apparent as if you go out and look on the ground where lot lines are, because you can't see them there either. So anyway, do you have any questions of me or Mr. Ames?
I just had one question. Just in your proposed solution, do you want me to wait? Are you
Sure.
not there yet?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about the square footage.
Mhm.
Do you need to change your recommended motion numbers if we go with your proposed solution? If that's the option we go with?
My recommendation was,
To leave the one as 20,000 and the other one with 8.
no, I'd make both of them 19,384
So
square
we
feet.
don't like
they're
the proposed
so they're
solution.
both
Okay.
the same. So I think it says staff recommends that the Board of Adjustment grant a variance from this 2009 city code from the 20,000 square foot minimum requirement of the R20 zone to 19,384
Yes.
square. Yeah. So
But
both.
then on the last page, you say allow the lot located to be divided as follows, sorry. The lot with the existing home to be on it to be 18,280 square feet. And the additional lot to be 20,000 square feet, which would leave the one under the 19,000.
All right. Sorry, I messed up on that.
Oh, you're
So
good. I just want to make
if
sure.
you follow the recommended motion, I think that on the first page.
So we would stick with that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing at this time. Seeing no one here, I'll close the public hearing. All right, we're open for discussion and any additional information from the planning staff and the attorneys. So, thoughts?
I was gonna say just real quick, the hardship, it seems, is that we're all here discussing this tonight.
I agree. I'm kind of wondering, I see this done, like I mentioned, to my grandparents' lot, as well as you and everyone else who lives along 70th South. And now you mentioned 90th South, which is the majority elderly people for the most part until they die, and family members buy their lots and then they're stuck in this situation. So we're making each of those families come to us and pay, is it $750 now every time they come to us with this? Is that what we're doing now to these families?
That's correct, but that's
I mean, is that
that's the only
choices?
game that we have, and so that's what we do because I think, truthfully, this process is better than staff making decisions that may be challengeable. This is not, because you're a board of appointed people by the mayor who is appointed to make these type of decisions. I understand that people have to pay money and that, but the council makes those decisions on the fees. So, but this is the only way that staff can accomplish this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe as West Oregon purchases their property, maybe we could guide them as to how they now go about this.
We'll make that note. That's a good.
That was the
good
question that I was
request.
going to ask, is at the time of purchase, is this communicated to, the impacted residents, like, hey, this will happen and then this is going to impact you in the future, and guide them through that process? Obviously this was a long time ago.
Yeah, I would imagine not, because the problem is it's the person purchasing the lot for the road is not even thinking that way. They're thinking, I need to purchase property for a road. They're not looking at the ramifications. Particularly, or probably in the time that it happened to the Kennison lot, I can assure you that didn't happen. Now, 90th South, and I will give you an example, is that we did look at that, more critically, because it did come to the city and was vetted. And because it came beforehand, what UDOT was doing, which is not under the control of the city. We were able to create an ordinance that went to the planning commission, approved by the city council, and signed by the mayor that allows people to have existing signs to relocate those signs so that they're not completely lost and it doesn't impact their businesses. So we're getting better at what we do. I don't know if we're perfect at it, but we're trying. Okay.
Well, just maybe this is a simple comment, but just by my understanding, the road was widened to help the community have better access or whatever in this area, and I think that it's also fair that to consider, you know, because of that that change to their lot, it does make sense that um, some something would be granted back to them to help make it easier for them.
All right. I'd like to go through the 5 criteria and just touch on each one of those and get a conversation about those. Criteria number 1. Does anyone have thoughts on that? I want to go through each one of them individually. So
I think I'll comment on criteria 1, then we can go through the rest of everyone else. But I think it has been established that there would be a hardship, and that the information that's been given to us by the staff and by the applicant has easily fallen into criteria 1, that yes, this is something that we can work to help with.
okay. And then on criteria number 2, anyone like to comment on that or have a question or comment on that?
It's definitely applicable to that property and not specifically to others in that area, although there may be others that have been affected, but it's not generally applicable to other properties.
So that's a positive thought. Criteria number 3, does anyone have a comment or thought on that?
Yes, granting this variance is definitely essential to allowing them to enjoy their property.
Okay. Number 4.
I think that one has also been established by the staff that there are other properties in that area for whatever reason that are of various sizes, and it wouldn't be uncharacteristic of the other houses in that area and lots.
Thank you. And criteria number 5, the spirit of this title is observed and substantial justice done. Anyone have a thought on that?
Yeah, I also agree. Talking about the lot sizes that are essentially kind of the same size. There's different sizes around, so I think it's not going to be out of the norm.
Thank you.
I also like what it says at the end, where it says, where to go? Property owners should not be penalized because of public action. And this was a public action that caused this.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion before we take a vote? Or, excuse me, let me back up a little bit. Do I hear a motion on the variance?
I move that I recommend the motion based on the finding of hardship set forth in 2009 City Code and in this staff report. I move that the Board of Adjustment approve the Kennison variance request from the 20,000 square foot minimum requirement of the RR20 zone to 19,384 minimum lot area on property located at 6634 South, 2700 West, parcel number 21-327-014-0000.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Clifton Smith and seconded by Christine Wright. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye. We have, the motion passes. Congratulations. We've
Thank you.
pretty straightforward and
We'll come see your new house when it's done.
yeah,
Oh, you good.
thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our third agenda item, which is the Lund property, 8627 South Redwood Road. The request is to waive the requirement to bury overhead utilities on a PO zone. Susan L. Lund, the applicant, Mark Forsyth is a staff member, and his parcel 27-03-201-090 and 091. Okay. I'd like to turn the time over to the applicant.
I'm Susan Lund. When I originally went into West Jordan, I asked for a lot line adjustment, and they said, oh, you should just do a minor subdivision. It's the same thing, which it hasn't been. So I agreed to do that, but now we're looking at combining lot 1 and 2, and a lot line adjustment would have been the best way to go. I shouldn't have to bury the power lines in front of the daycare because I want to build on the back property. I can see the requirement for a 50 house subdivision that's on undeveloped land, but the daycare is developed. It's been there for 43 years. This doesn't fit into the norm. There should be some give and take. Under discussion, page 6, it says, a new subdivision of land with over 400 feet of frontage is required by city ordinance to bury existing overhead power lines and telecom lines. The lines are only 120 feet long. So I'm asking for a variance because they're not 400 feet and I shouldn't have to bury them. They're not subject to be buried because they're not over 400 feet. Leaving the south pole where it is will not affect future development of lot 2 at all because it is in the easement area. That was mentioned in the comments that I received, that it would affect lot 2. The literal enforcement of this title would cause an unreasonable hardship for the daycare and is not necessary to carry out the general plan since the properties to the north and the ones on the south of the subdivision will never be buried. The teachers and parents will have to park on the roads at 8600 South and 8660 South and walk the children along Redwood Road and through the construction area for 3 to 4 weeks. This might cause the daycare to lose clients. The front will be torn up and have to be replaced. The sprinkler system, a city water line and other utility lines, driveway entrances, sod, and landscaping. Even Larry Gardner questioned why they would need to be buried. When I met with Rocky Mountain Power, Comcast, and Lumen, they all preferred the lines not buried. The east lane of Redwood Road will need to be cut off because of the heavy equipment going on and off the property. Boring is not an option. It will take 3 holes and cost 3 times as much and will interfere with the sprinkler, the water line, and the utilities that daycare just as much as the excavating would. B, the special circumstances are an existing business on the property that will be interrupted. C, leaving the lines will not affect any other properties in the area. D, the general plan will never be fulfilled because all the properties along Redwood Road that will never be buried. The ones on the west side have every 75 to 100 yards, they have lines that go over the road to the east side. But there are splotches along the east side that have power lines over them. E, to obscure the spirit of this title, I will be glad to sign a contract to bury the lines at the time the lines on the north of the daycare and the south of the subdivision are buried. When the commercial development across the street went in, they did not have to bury theirs. Doesn't make sense to do one little 72-yard area when the ones next to it aren't. There are 2 poles on the property, and there will be 2 poles on the property if the lines are buried. One just moved over closer to the other one, and both in front of the daycare. The same number can be struck with a vehicle or aesthetics or repairs. I talked to Rocky Mountain Power today, and they confirmed they never gave me 2 options on the poles, which was stated in the comments. And they don't recommend a steel pole because it's thousands more. It's hard to dig a 15-foot hole in a 5 square foot area, and it's a very complicated project to do. They said there are very few done. To repeat discussion, page 6, a new subdivision of land with over 400 feet of frontage is required by the city ordinance to bury the existing overhead power lines. I repeat, the lines are only 127 feet long. Therefore, should not be subject to be buried by the city ordinance. The city engineers should have knew what the ordinance was when they put it on my plans. And they should have, that was over 400 feet. And they should have known what my frontage was at only 127. So I shouldn't have had to come in for this variance because it's in your ordinances and rules that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to sit down or any questions?
No, wait there.
Any
You wanna go
questions?
first?
Oh yeah, I have questions. I'm just curious, so I always have questions. Okay, so you said if a subdivision frontage has 400 feet or more.
Yes,
That's
what's in your ordinance.
okay. So your daycare building is the white roof building.
Yeah.
So you bought the part below that on the map.
Yes.
How many feet of frontage is that?
The total frontage?
Yeah, just the new area. Oh, there we go.
I don't know. They were buried there when the Ganson subdivision went in
Can anybody read
because
that
that was part of
into numbers for me?
that was part of the development.
How much new frontage feet right there did she buy when she bought?
In other words, how wide was the piece that you purchased?
No, because she already had the daycare, correct? So she already had this. She already had lot 1, correct?
Yeah.
So she bought lot 2 and 3.
I think
second?
it was 67 feet long.
So it said, am I listening correctly? It said if there's 400 feet of frontage,
So
is it linear frontage?
That's
Right.
Huh?
That's right. What we're discussing is the subdivision.
Right, Mary. Excuse me, I'm just looking at the ordinance, it says site plan applications not involving a subdivision application are where the 400-foot requirement is. But this is involving a subdivision application, so
Correct.
that wouldn't apply, is my
Yes.
understanding.
Oh, so that's different. Okay. I was just getting confused on that. And then when you first said you bought the 2 and you were going to somehow merge them, you used a term.
Yeah, we wanted to do a lot line adjustment
What is
where
that?
it's just moved so that the piece is all one piece. Take
Combine all the parcels or
Yeah.
something? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Those are my questions.
Mine are pretty easy questions. So are you looking to build 3 single family homes on these lots? Is that
No.
okay.
No.
I guess this might not be for you, this might be for Larry. Why can't we just connect to the electricity that's in the subdivisions just to the east of hers?
We can.
We can't or we can?
We can.
So there's
You mean the north?
Well, I see
Oh, the
Egg Hill Farms Circle.
Oh.
There's like 6 homes there, and then there's other homes on 8600. You know, I'm just, have they told you if you can just connect your electricity to those to the east, or is that not possible? Is that a question the city can tell?
That's a good question. So the way the ordinance is written is any power lines that are part of the subdivision have to be buried underground.
Okay.
Actually, let me go to the actual wording here. So if you can kind of read through that, but basically it says so all electrical communications, television service cables, and similar distribution service wires and or cables to serve properties in connection with new subdivision development shall be placed underground at the expense of the developer, builder, or property owner.
Okay. I guess I was just trying to understand, you know, those homes that are just to the east and on 8600 South, their power lines are already buried, right? So I'm just wondering why is it not possible just to connect right there and not have to bury these lines that are already up?
They're buried. There's power lines on 8600 behind my lot 3.
So are those
On the north of my lot 3.
okay?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense then. I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning the city is. This seems like it's harder than it should be. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand so I can make sure that you're getting your due diligence. So thank you.
Is this because of how it's zoned, even though she's not using it as housing?
No, it's because it's a subdivision. So that's the trigger.
But what are you building on it?
We're looking at doing an elderly housing, and we're looking at taking out the line between 2 and 3 to do.
Okay, so you are building a subdivision.
Oh, no.
But you are subdividing.
We did subdivide it, yes.
Oh,
Well, we put 2 lots into 3. So I guess that's called subdividing.
uh-huh. Okay.
So is there a reason why it wasn't just put into one altogether?
What?
Is there a reason why it just wasn't all one?
Well, yes, the original reason was I'm giving it to my children so they can develop it. I found out from my accountant that it could be my Nestoffer estate when we die, and I wish he would have told me that 20 years ago.
I just had a question. You said you went in for a lot line adjustment.
Yes, that was 3 years ago, and that was with Larry. I had originally talked to Larry.
Was that a lot line adjustment would basically make it into one
It would have,
large lot?
yeah.
So a follow-up question to the staff is, would that kind of lot line adjustment serve the same purposes of the need here?
I've never consolidated lots by a lot line adjustment because you can't adjust a lot line into infinity. It has to go somewhere. And so the only way she could create a lots like this is through a subdivision process. And even consolidate lots is through a subdivision process. Lot line adjustment, it would say, for instance, on the graphic, if she wanted to make a lot 3 bigger, you could adjust the lot to the north or the south. You can't consolidate lots with a lot line adjustment because it doesn't. Usually what you'll end up with is a non-conforming little sliver piece that it could even be an inch wide, but it'd be non-conforming. We can't create a non-conforming situation out of a lot line adjustment. So that is the subdivision came to the city.
So to sum up what you're saying, to consolidate the lots into one would still require a subdivision process?
Yeah, because they were lots to begin with, and she wanted to change the configuration of them and create more lots.
Because it was just one lot to begin with.
Correct. Well, it was one lot and then 2
And
lots.
then we bought
actually.
the second one, yeah.
You bought the second one, the Canon piece, is that what the one
Yes.
so you bought that, and that, okay.
So the correct process was followed with the city, and we processed what the applicant submitted to it, and we being the city. And this subdivision is it meets all city ordinances and standards. So that's really not probably what you should be questioning tonight, because that was done correctly. It is recorded. It's recorded. So this is what you see is actually the legal document that has been recorded.
So currently this is how it is. And you want to break it.
And now
More.
we're gonna, take
And
the
that's what
lot line
causing,
between 2 and 3 out, possibly. We'll see.
and that's what's causing the new problem.
No, the new thing she wants to do
I
is
got
be
more confused.
completely separate application. So what I would keep in mind is, does Mrs. Lund meet the hardship for the subdivision she has done?
So did you just recently do this?
It's probably been over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was recorded in March.
Okay. Okay.
So what's causing the trigger? Why are we here today?
Subdividing. When the subdivision process starts, then that triggers.
Yeah, so when we went through the
Correct.
subdivision review, as part of that, they were required to bury those power lines as part of that. So this is part of the subdivision approval.
Now, well, the Board of Adjustment has the authority that they could grant the variance tonight, so that because obviously it doesn't make any sense to bury power lines if it's not associated with any construction project. And I think that's what Mrs. Lund's argument is that she's not really constructing anything. So the Board of Adjustment could grant the variance with the condition that if the senior housing is approved and if that goes in, that is when the power line is buried with the new project.
In other words, whenever construction starts, whether it be the office that are currently planned or thought of,
Yeah.
and or changed, it's still okay.
Yeah, and I think that's different than what she's asking. She's asking for a variance to never do it.
Right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what is this
How do you feel about that?
over 400 feet then? What does that mean?
That has nothing to do with, because it's not a site plan, it's a subdivision. If it was purely a site plan, then it would be less than 400 feet and you would not be required to vary it. But Susan, you initiated the subdivision process. Staff is bound by the rules of the ordinance. So
So Mrs. Lund, how do you feel about that alternative option for us to discuss? Because if there was
My
already,
preference is to grant the variance forever, of course, but
but if you had construction, a lot of the reasons you had listed for hardship would go away because you would already have redwood would be blocked, the machines would be there, a lot of the stuff would be torn up.
no, redwood wouldn't be blocked. Because I've got 2 accesses into those properties, one on each road.
Oh, true. So maybe redwood wouldn't be blocked as long.
But because it's Redwood Road is part of the subdivision, so that is the requirement
Yeah.
when you do in fact start construction. Correct? Am I?
Well, and like I said, to me, the hardship is also for clients and teachers. Even when I start construction back there, it's still, yes, it's going to be in Red Road at that point because that's where the line is in front of the daycare.
If we wanted, or if it makes more sense to to enforce this code when the construction is happening, does it make sense to just wait until the construction is planned to do the subdivision and then as part of the building project this is part of it at that point, and just hold off on the subdivision.
The underground of the utility.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean the new application, the pre-application? We have a pre-application in now for the senior housing.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the subdivision has to happen now because
The subdivision's already occurred. This subdivision you see is recorded.
Yeah.
What the pre-app is asking for is an amendment to that subdivision. Okay, that would also involve the construction of a senior housing project. Now that is rife with all months and months of approval process through the planning commission and city council. So it's not as simple as this one was because everything's been dedicated, but it has to have the approval of the city council.
so building the senior housing will happen sometime in the future. But
Hopefully.
it could be a long,
Hopefully.
a long time in the
That
future.
because it's zone professional office and offices are a dime a dozen and people are doing them in their homes. So we just figured that's not the way to go at this point. We thought about townhomes and Mark says they're not single family homes, which I figured they were, but okay.
Larry, I have a question real quick. So I live across the way from Westwood Middle School, and that neighborhood that's just across the street all has homes with above ground power lines. I live just a little bit west or east of there, and we're in a newer neighborhood. And yes, the whole subdivision was required. All of our power lines are buried. So my question is, do we, as a Board of Adjustment, have the power to go against this ordinance, or is it set in law that we can't?
No, well, no, what it is, Chase, you can,
The reason I bring it up is
what it is just like I explained, it is based on the test of hardship. If you feel as a Board of Adjustment that she has met the test of hardship under state law and city orders, you can grant the variance. And you won't be violating anything because you are specifically appointed for that.
okay. I mean, obviously, we can't go against ordinances or code that's set by the city council.
Yes, you can. One thing, the Board of Adjustment, that's the reason you focus on the tests of hardship. Because what you can't say is that, no, everyone else has to bury their power lines except this applicant, because then what you're doing is a legislative action. You're not doing an administrative action. So I'd focus on the tests of hardship. And if you feel as a board that this application meets the test of hardship, then by all means grant the variance. But like I said, you do have the authority to condition this variance also.
Great. Like I said, one thing I learned when I was on the city council is you can always change ordinances and you can always change codes. But I was asking the question because I don't think we can do that. That's a legislative thing. So in this case, I've seen two hardships tonight. Number one, $80,000 to me is a hardship. I mean, I don't have $80,000.
It's a major hardship.
Yes, so I agree with you on that one. And then I do agree on the second hardship of there will be issues with the current daycare. So, as we discuss this, I'm leaning towards the applicant as a hardship. I just want to make sure that we don't make a decision that we can't make as a body of the Board of Adjustment.
Just a reminder for the board that the hardship has to be non-financial.
Right. But
And that's the rub.
it's still hardship.
It's still a hardship,
We
but
agree
it
it's
can't
a-
be financial, and so
hardship.
it's still.
Yes, the hardship that the variance needs to be based on cannot be financial. Obviously,
Right.
we all know that finances can be a hardship, but
And we say the hardship is all around just a hardship, but also there's so much going on with this situation. It kind of doesn't make sense right now to make a decision on this when there's still so many applications in the works.
so I would just refer you back to the 5.
Yeah, I know.
And I went through those with the ABCD. Yeah.
Have you asked the power and all these companies if maybe they could just work through lot 2 and you could use like the north end of lot 3 for access or anything. Can you guys access the back of your daycare?
For power?
No, for access, like for parents to get in and out of during the construction of it.
Oh, not really. There's fence around it.
There's not
There's
a
a field
gate.
behind it. and
I mean, I drive by
grass.
the front all the time. I just never have driven around the
Yeah.
side.
No, there's fence all the way around the property.
But a gate could be installed to allow access to that for parking.
I'm just trying to think out like crazy outside the box.
Well, there is a gate on 8600 so that they can buy wood chips and dump them in the playground. But I don't think parents and teachers are going to have access to the lock and be going through the back of
Right.
the deck and knocking on the back door to get into the daycare.
I mean, it stinks. It all stinks. The daycare at our building flooded a few weeks ago, and it stinks, but it all stinks. We've been having to make all kinds of crazy changes, so I'm just trying to think of anything just outside that box. And 8660 already has underground power, but they can't somehow like shoot stuff under the ground over to lot 1.
I don't know. It would be the same cost, wouldn't it? Same as going along in front.
I don't have any idea. I'm the creative one. My husband's the realistic one with projects.
Any other thoughts or comments, questions to the applicant? Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to have the staff do their presentation at this point.
All right. Well, I think it's already been done. All right. So I'll just kind of set the stage here, but this is probably information we already know. But so the site's located between 8600 South and 8660 South on Redwood Road, as you can see there on the map. So the background on this, we've kind of already talked about. Miss Lund came in for a subdivision to her property. Originally, she had the site that she had one parcel that included the daycare and the vacant land behind it, and then when the Ganson Lane subdivision went through and 8660 South went through, it basically created a leftover parcel which Susan Lund purchased from Mr. Gary Cannon. So basically, before this subdivision went through, there were two parcels, and so this subdivision eventually basically was to combine those two and re-subdivide them into 3 lots, like you see here. So these are the power lines in question. Again, we've kind of already been talking about this, but there's a picture of them, so you can kind of see them a little bit better. But so right now there's an access on the north. You can see there next to that northern pole, and then there's a southern access kind of in the middle. And then there's a couple kind of non-conforming accesses even south of there. It's a little hard to see on this map, but you can kind of make it out. But there's one in the north, one in the middle. Those are kind of the 2 main accesses. Then there's another one kind of to this, I guess it's a gravel fenced area there, and then another one further to the south. So as part of the subdivision approval, there were, and with UDOT's recommendation, they were required to vacate that entrance is closed. That's right next to that corner there. So just for context, but anyway, just thought I'd point that out. So this is the section of code that we've been talking about. This is the requirement to underground utilities as part of the subdivision. So kind of the main focus on these is So is that first one that includes any existing and new lines. Those are required to be buried with a subdivision. And then again, just to clarify, if it's a site plan not involving any subdivision at all that has less than 400 feet of frontage, those are not required to bury their power. So the other exception to this is that if the electrical lines are over 69 kilovolts, which according to our research, these are under 69 kilovolts. So when we spoke to Rocky Mountain Power, just to get their feedback on what options are available to the applicant, they essentially told them they had two options. Well, technically they had three, but the third option involved burying the power lines even further to the north and across the road, which we can't require because it would be outside the boundaries of the subdivision. So I explained that to Rocky Mountain Power. So we basically have these two options that they've explained to us. So option one is to keep the existing pole on the north as is, and keep the lines running over the driveway, and then install a new pole on the south side of that driveway. So basically everything from the north property line across the driveway would still remain above ground, and then from there it would be buried underground and continue all the way to the south. The second option was to install a self-supporting steel pole, which actually doesn't need any guy wire support. The reason for option one is because whenever you terminate a pole, especially a wooden pole, you have to have a guy wire to support it. So with the driveway being this close to that pole, this is the reason they were running the lines across the driveway. But with a self-supporting steel pole, those don't actually require a guy wire to support. So you could replace that wooden pole with the steel pole and then just run the lines straight down and then all the way across the frontage. Now that is a little bit of increased cost, probably quite a bit. But again, going back to the can't grant a variance for a financial hardship, that's kind of what we've been considering. So when we mapped out the lines, you can kind of see here, looks like most of the main lines are in Redwood Road or in the park strip. So when we talked to Rocky Mountain Power, they confirmed that. They said it wouldn't be in the way of any lines. Private irrigation lines, obviously those would be affected. Probably need to cut into those. They do have the option to do a horizontal bore, which would basically you just start at that existing pole on the south and run straight underground. But again, that would be pretty significant cost. So again, these are just kind of the criteria. These are kind of the things we found. Basically, probably more in the interest of time, and since we've kind of talked a lot about this already, I'll just sum this up. But basically, when we were going through this, those two options, we were looking at those two options, and without regard to finances and kind of viewing it through that lens, we really had to look at the conditions of the property and see which of these options would be most feasible. And so with this criteria A, just looking at the topography, all the land's pretty flat. There's no hills or rivers or creeks or cliffs or anything that would really be in the way of burying these lines. And then with those two options, basically you've got two situations. One would result in basically the same number of poles that she's got there already, albeit one would just be moved further to the north, and you get, a few hundred feet of buried lines. And then the option two, which would be to just bury the entire frontage and have that steel pole. So with that second option, we really didn't see a whole lot of reasons why that couldn't be implemented other than financial. So that's really kind of our justification here for a lot of these criteria. So the lots, as you can kind of see, are really pretty square shaped. So there's really no weird shapes that would really make it difficult to bury the utility lines that we can see. They do have utility easements along there 10 feet. So, any future development would obviously be built outside of those lines. So that wouldn't really interfere with it much. And then criteria 3 just kind of deals, let's see. So criteria 3 just kind of deals with a substantial property right possessed by other property. So just kind of looking at the general area. Let's see, let me go back to here. So you've got the Biograss site on the other side of the street. So that's a much older property that's been there many years. And now it is large enough that if they were to subdivide, they would also be required to bury their power. But given the amount of frontage they have here, they have about over 230, somewhere in that area. So if they were to just do a simple site plan without subdividing a lot, they most likely would not be required to bury their power. Now along the south side, I don't know. I think those lines are already buried, but anyway, I'm speaking in hypotheticals. But and then just to address the shopping center on just across the street to the south. So that is, if you can kind of squint and see it there, on that southwest corner of Redwood Road and Gardner Lane, that's the shopping center we're referring to. So that one was a parcel at the time they developed that. They have less than 400 square feet of frontage. So by that exception in the code, they were not required to bury their power lines. So, but in contrast, in looking at the Ganson Lane subdivision, which is directly to the south, so that's on that southeast corner of Redwood Road and 8660 South, that was a subdivision, and so they were required to bury their power, and they did. So they buried their power all the way along the frontage, all the way under 8660, and then up to where that original remnant parcel was, so where that existing pole on the south end is now. So, and that's not the only project on Redwood Road that's prepared to bury their power. There's several others that have subdivided their property that were required to do that as well. So, and then with the general plan, this one's a little more subjective. So the general plan was recently updated back in June, and they really kind of overhauled all the goals and policies of that. There used to be many more goals and policies that were a lot more specific, but now they're kind of these much fewer broader guiding principles. And so really pretty much the only ones that apply to that are just the improvement of aesthetics, promotion of public health, safety, and welfare, and good urban design along the street. So really in terms of these three options, basically the options were to leave the overhead utilities as is, go with option 1 or go with option 2. And so it was kind of a good, better, best in terms of ranking those, existing being kind of good. I mean, it's really doesn't change much as far as aesthetics go. And then the same with option 1, albeit with option 1, you do kind of get a pole that's right in front of the daycare building. So I guess it does kind of affect the aesthetics there a little bit. And then with option 2, really pretty much solves all three of those. So you'd be burying the utility lines all along that frontage. You'd be reducing the poles by one. You'd have a stronger pole that if it were hit by a car, that it wouldn't fall over and crush the house or the daycare. And you know, even if it was hit, you get be less likely to have a power outage. So, anyway, that's kind of our concern with general plan. And then with criteria 5, spirit of the law is really pretty much the same as the general plan. You know, the purpose of it is to control aesthetics. It's to promote safety of motorists and pedestrians, prevent outages, things like that. So, so with those 3 options, we were looking at option 2 was again kind of the best option. So anyway, that's my presentation, and I can answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. The power line, at this point in time where it's exposed, if it were to be hit by a car or somehow taken out of commission, that would cause a general outage in the area. Is that correct?
Most likely, yeah. I mean, I'm not Rocky Mountain Power, but I think most of us could conclude that
Basically, it's not limited to power to their.
Yeah, those wooden poles are not designed to be very sturdy, and so they tend to break pretty easily if hit by a car, especially on Redwood Road where you've got 50-mile-an-hour traffic.
When, assume the elderly housing is approved, will the builder tap into the overhead power, or are they going to force it at that point anyway? Do we know?
I guess it just depends on where you'd be able to draw power from. On some of those front lots, I don't see how you could draw, where you could draw power from. Other than those lines, the daycare is already drawing power from those lines along Redwood Road. So, and then lot 3, I think generally you would just run those through a public utility easement.
Is there overhead power line running from the corner of Redwood Road and going east on 8600 South that services the house?
Yeah, so there's a power line
there.
So if you look at that lot on the corner of Redwood Road and 8600 South, that teeny tiny one, there's actually a single power pole in the northeast corner of that lot. So that power actually runs across the street, and most of the lines run along the north side of 8600 South.
So I'm just going to throw a suggestion here. It sounds like there is a possible way to make this work without, number one, asking for a variance, and number two, having someone at the city that knows more details than our board and more details than maybe, the city lawyers that can say, hey, let's look at this again. Instead of asking for a variance, here's how you can subdivide or change your lots so we don't even have to come and ask for this variance. Because at this point, the power poles have been there probably longer than I've been in West Jordan. I understand why she's asking for the variance. I understand why the city's saying no. But I'm going to be honest with you, there's got to be someone, and Dirk, maybe some of your staff can sit down with the applicant and say, if you want to keep the power poles up here, this is what you need to do. Because at this point, I'm seeing the criteria doesn't fit the variance, but at the same time, we as a board kind of agree with the applicant that we wish that without the variance that we could grant this. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm to the point where I think it needs to be relooked at by the city and see if they can give her an option that says, in order to not have to bury it, keep the power poles, this is what you would have to do with the land. Is that a suggestion that is feasible, or is that just Chad thinking too far outside the box?
That is way above my head. I'll let either Mayor or Larry answer that.
Is that an attorney on a Larry question? Okay.
Because obviously there is a way that she could subdivide the land or change the lines so that the power lines could stay up. But right now, all we're discussing is a variance that looks like it can't pass.
Well, I have and my question is, can it be done without having to? Yeah, that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Can it be done? What was the question, sir?
What can the applicant do to the current proposal so that she doesn't have to ask for a variance? So that we don't even have to discuss.
Subdivision proposal to her.
Right.
To
Like,
her proposal.
how can we fix the subdivision
Yes.
so the power lines don't have to be buried at all?
Which is in essence a variance.
Yes and no.
Not this variance.
Yeah.
It's
Because
something else.
basically the city could say, well, according to the rules and the laws and the codes, if you did this, you wouldn't have to ask for the variance. It would just stay up and we wouldn't take the poles down.
Yeah.
Because earlier we talked about if you subdivided it differently, she wouldn't have to do this, correct?
No, what, the way I understand it is once you make do the subdivision, if you have 400 feet or more, you have to bury a power line. That's what triggers.
It was.
Yeah,
she hadn't
she's
done the
already,
subdivision.
she's already done the subdivision.
Correct.
So the question is, well, at what point in time do the power lines get buried? Do they have to be done now before there's not even development on the property, or should it be done with development? And right now, Mrs. Lund's not proposing to develop anything. She's done a simple subdivision. And what I'm now, if the senior housing that she has proposed, say the city council rezoned it, put the senior housing overlay, site plan approval, all the stars aligned, she was able to build this. Would the Board of Adjustment still feel that it's appropriate to leave those power lines above ground with a new building in front of it? And what I'm saying is that, if you grant the variance, and that's only if you find the 5 tests of hardship, do you condition it? And because the variance runs to the land, so it'd be forever and ever, unless you condition it by saying that, well, if you build this apartment project, then they need to be underground at that time.
Because I think the problem is, and I can't speak for everyone, is what I'm seeing is all the criteria is not met and we can't find a hardship. That's what I'm seeing. Even though we agree with her that, burying the lines is something we'd like to avoid.
Sorry, can I just clarify and tell me if I'm incorrect? Did you subdivide knowing this was coming?
Had no idea.
Did you subdivide after you talked to your estate lawyer or whoever who was trying to guide you to your estate planning?
Yeah, after, because my husband and I are keeping the daycare.
Sorry, I should have asked you to go to the microphone. So I think this is kind of tied to what I originally was saying about the other application today, which is we're not really guiding our applicants towards all of their information with anything. And I'm not blaming the city. I think this is like nationwide problem with a lot of things. But if we tell them, hey, if you subdivide that lot, just FYI, you might want to read these codes, they might change their mind and think, hey, that's going to cost me 80 grand. And I know we can't say the cost is the reason we don't want to deny or approve something, but I mean, actions have consequences. We know that.
Well,
We can't learn the consequences. It's
Right.
hard to know.
in this case, I disagree because she's known for a long time before she subdivided. But what it was is, yes, Susan, we had this discussion a long time ago. But your subdivision, original subdivision, and this was even before you purchased Gary Cannon's piece. And so, but at that time, your subdivision was different. It didn't come out to Redwood Road. One of the first concepts you came up with. The second concept did include much more property. So noted, we will make people very aware that, it is an ordinance.
So yeah, I kind of agree with Chad. I don't know what to do with this.
So just really quickly, just West Jordan Code 137G-1. There's the board is given authority to take three actions. One is to approve the variance. The second is to approve with conditions, which has been discussed, or to deny the variance. So unfortunately, there isn't. The board isn't authorized to kind of take another path there. So,
Okay.
We can't massage it the way we like.
no, unfortunately.
I don't know if for due diligence we need to go through all of the criteria, but just to state my own thoughts, that I would be willing to grant a conditional variance. Just, but that would only be because of the financial hardship, and I don't know if that's even something like can you make it conditional because there would be a financial hardship?
I don't believe we can. But I would be willing to. I don't even know how to word it.
My question is, are we just kicking the can down the road? Because if we do a conditional, they're gonna have to bury the power line down the road anyway. When construction starts, is that correct? Doesn't have to be buried until they,
So I should point out that, and this is really just for context, but those power lines, along with all the other public improvements associated with this subdivision, most of those public improvements are on 8600 South. So that's the extension of the road, the sidewalk parts are a curb and gutter, some utility lines, that sort of thing. But the bill of the power lines, to my knowledge, was included in those public bonds.
and what again?
The public.
The public improvement bonds.
Okay.
So you're saying a lot of the cost was included in public bonds?
Correct.
I just wanted to quickly back up to Board Member Wright's question. 137G-7 says that conditions can be granted to mitigate any harmful effects of the variance. It's not limited in the same way. So the condition is fine, but the variance, you still have to meet that criteria, right? So it's kind of a circular.
22.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry. One more question. I was just trying to think of it. So if we denied the variance tonight, at what time frame would they have to make these improvements?
I believe it's within the warranty period.
The warranty period meaning the
I'm speaking as an engineer, and I'm not an engineer, so
I'm sorry, what? I missed.
so it would be within the warranty period.
And what is the warranty period?
So that's a time that the improvements have to be installed within.
Once the subdivision is approved, is that the?
Mm.
I talked to someone in the city and they said there wasn't a time limit on that because the other ones aren't going to get done either until we know what we're going to build on them.
Mrs. Lund, can you go to the mic to talk? Sorry, it's a recorded meeting.
Yeah, I've talked to someone in the city because that's what I was worried about is if, I had to do all the improvements right away. And they said, no, there's not a time limit on, which is good because like I said, we can't do all the improvements until we know what we're going to build on the property. Because that'll tell us where the approaches are going to be. It'll tell us if we need the 2 sewers or we can do 1 sewer or.
How far into the future do you anticipate starting construction.
As soon as we get it approved.
All right, thank you very much. I take this time to open the public hearing portion of our meeting. Seeing no public out there, I'll close the public hearing. All right, we can discuss our thoughts.
I think we've already been through all of the criteria. And I feel like we have our hands tied, and I feel like the applicant has their hands tied as far as what can be done. Personally, I'm on the applicant's side. I don't see a reason to bury the lines for what she needs to do and what they need to do. But I also understand there's ordinances and codes that we can't just go ahead and say, okay, just do it. So that's where I'm stuck right now. And what I'd like to do is, if we follow the criteria and can't make a variance, is to make sure that our applicant knows that there's a way that she can work with the city to find another way to do this. Obviously, the lines have been up there for a long time. They haven't been buried. They're not a nuisance. There's no aesthetics. No one drives by and goes, look at those ugly power lines. So that's not the problem here. The problem is, what will happen in the future and how and when will that be buried? So difficult decision tonight because my heart says no, but I understand the ordinances and codes say there's some things that we have to do as a body.
Our hands are definitely tied in that from that aspect. Any other comments?
So you said we had three options. How would we present a conditional approval or approval based on a condition?
So I guess if I'm understanding you correct, you're asking for available alternatives, or are you asking how?
Right. So you mentioned, and I think we're all feeling like, some of us are thinking, we approve. Some of us are probably thinking we deny. And I think most of us are probably in the middle of, well, this is probably going to be kicked down the line where it's going to be required. It's not a requirement at this point. So wouldn't that be a approval with a condition? Maybe I'm not understanding the language correctly.
Sorry, so you're asking the proposal that was talked about, in which it would be approved on the condition that once construction started, they would be buried.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that is possible today, because you still have to show that there's a hardship to meet the variance. So really, to me, that's just another way of denying the variance. Maybe Larry has a different take on that, but I think
I agree.
I think I think again, the recommendation of the board is to stick to the criteria that's outlined, the 5 elements, and then go through it that way. If you think there's a way to meet all of those conditions under different conditions, not to use conditions multiple times there, but then that would be a situation where you could approve with obviously different conditions, but
I can't remember if we choose to go with the board's recommendation and deny this. Does she have the option to come back
In a year, 1 year.
in a year? And also, I know that they told you have no time frame. I'm getting my approved denies confused. If you had to bury them, I think that they're going to come back and give you a timeline. I just wanted to say that.
Her plans are to start right away. So to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense either, just because we're just, again, like I said, we're just kicking the can down the road until that point. We're denying the variance until she starts construction. Is that,
Yeah,
am I reading that right?
that's, if it's immediate, there's no difference.
It's not the same.
Oh, somebody make a motion. Somebody figure out how to word a motion.
I'll make a motion, based upon the Board of Adjustment findings that the applicant has not met all variance criteria required by state and city codes. I move that the Board of Adjustment deny the variance for the applicant's property located at 8627 South Redwood Road, modifying the requirement of burying the overhead power lines along Redwood Road.
I will second that motion.
A motion has been made by Clifton Smith and seconded by Augustine
Oh, yes.
Avalos. All in favor?
Aye.
Fine.
Aye.
Aye.
And
Okay.
then just to follow that up, I would say, if the city or staff who works with the applicant can follow up with them to help them out in the future with this. I know things, I know you mentioned the year wait, but we want to make sure that she's able to talk to the city and make things work for her, to give her the options to keep those power lines up, even though we were unable to deny or allow it tonight. So
I think
there's got to be a way.
I think
There's a mayor back there that can maybe find a way, right? Maybe.
we also want to follow up with that. I think education is very important, and I'm not saying that staff doesn't educate, but I think sometimes it's really important to maybe get your communications team involved and try to explain this and provide some sort of informational graphs in simple terms for people to understand. Because sometimes things are just over people's heads, as you can tell, with some of us, including myself. But just something to think about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Motion's been made by Chad Lamb and seconded by Christine Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.